Welcome to the Money Talk podcast. It is February 19th, 4 p.m. on a Monday, the week after the protests. And we are here. We are live. Here is a quick look of some of the things that we are going to try and cover today before time runs out. So, the first thing I do on every single stream, every single Monday, is I share how much I made last week. And spoiler alert, I did work on Valentine's Day. Sorry to disappoint you if you wanted me to strike. We'll talk more about that. We're also going to show how much other drivers made last week. We'll see if the other drivers who probably didn't strike, we'll see how much money they made. We're going to look at some of the aftermath of the strike. For example, we're going to look at what the news sources are saying. We're going to look at what other drivers are saying. We're going to even check out the live footage from the V-Day protests. A bunch of drivers went down to the Uber headquarters in California. And we're going to just quickly scroll through some clips that shows us, what was the magnitude of the strike? Was it effective? That's a lot of the talking points being made by drivers right now. So I'll share my take with you if I think this was even effective or not. So after that, we'll go through some Uber driver strike reactions from Reddit. We'll do some Lyft driver strike reactions from Reddit as well. And then this will probably be the last thing we do, but maybe not. I'm going to buy a Tesla. I'm going to do it live on stream. And we're going to see how much a Tesla really costs and if it's actually worth it for rideshare drivers. Here's some other stories where if we have enough time, we'll get to it. And if we can't cover it today, they stay on the docket for next week. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl cash rides. We're going to talk about cash rides at Miami Airport. We're going to take a dive into priority mode on Lyft to see if it's worth it. We're going to also talk about airport rides and if that's worth it. And then we have some coverage on car insurance increases and then the algorithmic wage discrimination that Uber said is present within their apps. That's coming from the CEO. So we definitely at some point want to get into these, but it's all going to be based on how much time we have. Usually I go from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. and sometimes that's not enough time. But because I am entertaining guests at my house, I will only be going from 4 p.m. till about 6 p.m. But we will, at minimum, get to me trying to buy a Tesla so we can see what that experience is really like. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I do when I show my income is I typically like to show proof. So I do have a spreadsheet that I use to track all of my mileage, all of my expenses, all of my income that you can get. It's linked below. But, anyone can come on here and write whatever numbers they want in these fields. And so in order to combat this thing where people always assume I'm lying or I'm a shill or I'm paid by Lyft, I like to show proof in the apps first. So this is a live view right now. I have my location turned off, but this is downtown Charleston. It's hot right now. And if you appreciate the fact that I'm not out there making money and that I'm instead here showing you how much money I made, make sure you hit the like button on this video. Thank you. So let's go to here. We'll go to last week. I didn't drive this morning because, again, I have guests. They'll be here until Thursday. They came yesterday. So I won't be driving too much this week, unfortunately, but we'll make up for it. We have no choice but to make up for it. So in total, I made $1,182.17 last week with Lyft. It says I have 575 miles booked. It's probably more than that. It says I drove for 224 hours, 54 minutes booked. Definitely more than that, but we'll break that down in a second. Let's take a step back and let's look at the daily activity, so I can show you how much I made on every individual day. So we'll start at the bottom. Now we're here. Let's go. All right, so this all started on a Monday. On Monday, I did 17 rides. I drove for 6 hours and 17 minutes of online time. That's not the full story. We'll talk about it. And I made 600. I made $240.68, and I got 4 tips. A lot of ride bonuses here. I was kind of testing a new strategy where, primarily speaking, the only time I drove was when there were bonuses, and that did involve me chasing bonuses. So even though it says online for 6 hours and 17 minutes, it's probably closer to 7 or 8 hours, which is still pretty good for the amount of money I made. But I want to continue to push this conversation where we need to be careful when we're receiving information as drivers from other drivers. We don't know if they're really talking about active time. And even if they're talking about online time can be manipulated. And even with those two, there are like if you're running multiple apps, online time isn't going to be your best bet. Because if I have the Uber app on and the Lyft app on, then it's going to like show double time, which is not accurate. So we need to be make sure that we're using. We honestly, I think we should be using all three. We should be using what's now called door to door time. I would say minus your breaks, your online time, and your active time, but for three different reasons. If you're trying to talk to another driver and you're trying to talk about how much money you're making, I think that door to door time is actually the best metric for that. Online time is a good metric of when you're actually online and working, what's happening. And it also depends on the driver. Different drivers have different ways they approach driving. So online time is different per person. But even active time has a benefit, right? Active time says, all right, when I actually am on the way to a passenger or I have a passenger in my car, here's how much money I make. Now, I think active time is a great way to compare active time on like a Friday to active time on like on a Thursday, but it's not a great way. But it's not a great way to measure your overall hourly performance as an independent contractor with Uber Lyft. So that's my short spiel. I'll get into deeper where I do a much deeper dive on that. But for now, let's keep moving forward. So on Tuesday, I didn't really drive. I know it says I made $24 in over 33 minutes. What actually happened is I drove Monday and I drove into Tuesday. So I didn't actually go back out on Tuesday. Um, I had to work on YouTube stuff. I had to make some videos. I knew I wanted to do a lot of hours this week, and I knew Valentine's was the next day. I knew Trump was coming to my city, so I wanted to be able to capitalize on that without falling behind on YouTube. I post videos daily, and that in itself is not an easy task. So I took Tuesday off, took the slowest day of the week off, and that's probably what I'll do moving forward. I'll try to take the slowest day of the week off to do YouTube stuff so that I'm able to maximize my income on the rest of the days. And in my market, Tuesday is the slowest day. So this is Wednesday. This is V Day. This is the day drivers were striking, and I made $282 over the course of 7 hours, about 10 hours, um, doing 20 rides. I got no tips, none, probably because the rides were more expensive than they expected. My experience in my city is that I would be lying if I said that I did not benefit from those who did not work. So I think that's the awkward elephant in the room that I want to talk about. I don't want to dismiss it. The This Wednesday there were a lot more bonuses than are usually on a Wednesday, and I drove in the morning and I drove at night. You can see I drove at 5:01 a.m. I took my first ride. I had some really good bonuses, and even here where it says Tuesday, this was actually from Wednesday. Sometimes if the passenger orders the ride the previous day, so for me in my city in my time zone, the Lyft day starts at 5 a.m. So Wednesday 5 a.m. is when Wednesday starts. Wednesday at 4:50 a.m. that's considered Tuesday according to this app. So even though this says 5:15 a.m., which would be on a Wednesday, because this passenger ordered the ride on the Tuesday, it counts for Tuesday, even though I, Tristan Thomas, picked it up on Wednesday. So that's something to keep in mind. So this would actually technically this 20 what $4 would also be added to my Valentine's Day earnings. But I did notice a lot of bonuses in the morning that were a lot stronger than they usually are. And I'm going to attribute that to the fact that drivers are probably protesting. And I don't feel bad. Um, but it would be wrong of me not to acknowledge that, the money I made on this day in some way, shape, and form, I have to acknowledge that it's because of the strike. So here I am saying it. So pretty much bonuses on every single ride. I was pretty much testing never taking a ride unless it's attached to a bonus, and it worked pretty well. Yeah, it worked pretty well. So I'll show you. I'll get into like the breakdown, the taxes, and all that in the spreadsheet, but we'll keep pushing forward, showing you the proof of what I actually made. So this is on Thursday. Thursday, I drove for 12 rides over the course of 4 hours, and I made $171.43. I don't even remember Thursday in my brain. I think I went out for a couple hours and came home. Oh yeah, I remember. I had something I had to do on Friday, early morning, something that was family related. So I came home, took care of that, and then Friday I didn't drive. I came home at like really late in the morning. Um, I didn't get too much sleep. I had to be up early. I had to be at the thing for a considerable amount of time, and I was exhausted. To be honest with you, I was exhausted. I decided I would just take the L, not work the Friday, and instead work the Saturday because Saturday is the busiest day of the week in my market. And I also suspected that because Valentine's fell on a Wednesday, that majority of the people would celebrate on the weekend, and that was also true. And there was also a festival called Siwi, something about animals and paintings and something, but it's pretty big, and it showed. Right, Saturday was my busiest day of the week. It was the best day of the week. I made $483.74 on 30 rides in 8 hours, but it was more like 10 hours, and I got 10 tips. Of course, this doesn't include Uber. I didn't do too much on Uber, but there's some Uber stuff there. And I didn't drive Sunday. I wanted to, but I didn't. This is from a tip that I got, this 950. That's when, I have some friends that came into town, and, I'll make the sacrifice. Over the next few days while they're here, I'll probably just focus more on YouTube, but I'm going to go hard this weekend to make up for lost time. But let's go through Uber, and then I want to share something that I have going on personally. It's not too personal, but we'll quickly go through Uber. I just want to move on from this part. So with Uber, Monday I made $58. Nope, that's not true. With Uber on Monday, I made $18.56 over 33 minutes. On Wednesday, I made $58.52 over an hour and a half. And then on Thursday, I made $29.70 over 34 minutes. I run Uber and Lyft split screen on my phone. I have a folding phone. So on one half, I'll put Uber, and on the other half I'll put Lyft. And I'm always looking, I'm always comparing bonuses, I'm always comparing what's happening. But typically speaking, I do Lyft more when it's busy because um of the tools. The area filters on Lyft are significantly better than Uber, and I'm able to get a lot of quicker, shorter rides with bonuses attached to them, even though those bonuses aren't as strong as Uber. But if I can get two rides within 20 minutes at $5 bonuses, which are shorter rides, less gas, better earnings per mile, to me that's better than a longer ride with a longer bonus, bigger bonus on Uber. So that is my theory on that. And before we dip away from Uber, I want to show you, they gave me earnings guarantee. I spoke about it a little bit in a previous video, but I want to bring it up here. I want to know your thoughts on this. It says I can earn $2,140 if I do 210 rides by March 17th. So I worked out the average. If I do less than $10 per ride, Uber will have to pay me money. But I'm kind of thinking, it has me thinking, if should I intentionally try to make less money with Uber just so Uber pays me more? Like if I'm able to make more than $2,140 over the course of 210 rides, like if I'm able to make $4,000 instead of the $2,000 that they're promising, is that worth it? I know I'd have to drive more miles. I know that it would increase my expense ratio, but should I intentionally make less money just to have a better number, just to make more dollars per mile, just to spend less on the gas for that money? Or would I rather have the $4,000 and my expenses be a little more than that? My expense ratio is about 10 to 15%. And when it comes to math and the way things scale, if I make $4,000, that means I spent $400 to make the $4,000. But if I'm able to make $2,000 and only spend $100 to make that $2,000, that would be 5%. That's if I assumed $5 per ride, which would be half of the $10, which is how I get to that 5% from the 10%. Is that worth it? Would you rather spend $100 to make $2,140 one time, or would you rather spend $400 to make $4,000 one time? So that's kind of what's happening in my brain, and I'm not sure. So if you're watching this and you have an opinion to give, let me know, which one would you rather do? because that's kind of the scale of what Uber and Lyft is, right? We have drivers out there who are focused on profit, which is fine. Just this is an acknowledgement, not a critique. But you can make $2 per mile and work 10 hours a week and still not make enough money to pay your bills versus someone else who might be making 80 cents per mile, but because they're working 40, 50, 60 hours, yeah, their profit per mile and their profit per hour might be lower than yours, but they're making more overall money than you. So it's a sliding scale, right? Because there's, just for the sake of the argument, if there are the 20 most profitable hours in the week, right? It might be Saturday, Friday, whenever it is. There are 20 super profitable hours. And if you work just those 20 hours, your numbers will look fantastic. But if you worked just those 20 hours, is it enough to afford your lifestyle? Is it enough to pay off your debt? Is it enough to pay your bills? So that's the sliding scale that happens in rideshare, to where if I want to make $3,000 in 1 week, I know I'm going to have to work some of the crappy hours in order to add to that pot. And those hours, that money won't be as profitable per hour or per mile than just working the best 20. So what's that sliding scale for you? So that's kind of what I'm playing with in my head. I don't know. I think that what I'll do is maybe I'll focus on driving busy hours with Lyft. And then during slow hours, I can, take 7 rides per day in order to meet this quota. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But in an instance where I'm on Uber and there's a $20 bonus, do I not take it because I want Uber to pay me out more money in the guarantee? Like, I'm just unsure right now. So I'm open to all opinions on this. Whatever you want to say. You might get some pushback from me, and that has to be okay, because in the effort of receiving information, I have to critique the information in order to make sure that it's well thought through. So I don't think that just because I push back that I disagree. If anything, if I take the time to push back, it's because I'm also challenging myself internally while talking to you. So that's something that I think, I don't know. So just let me know. You let me know. So let's take a look at my spreadsheet. This is all my mileage. I every time I drive, I look at my odometer, put the mileage in. So total for February so far is $2,007.52 over the course of 54 hours and 14 minutes, and that includes offline time. So I'm trying to be as accurate as possible when I share my information with you, and I want you guys, whether you disagree or agree with it, I want you guys to understand when I'm out there driving, how much money I'm making per hour, right? So I calculate my offline time. If I drop someone off outside of a bonus area and I need to drive back to the bonus area, I'm tracking that. Now, if you disagree whether drivers should do that, like, that's not really the point here. The point here is that that when I'm working rideshare, when I am intentionally working rideshare, this is how much I make per hour. And I think that's the best metric when talking from driver to driver. Comparing active time from me to active time to you isn't that great. Comparing online time from me to someone who might, be online and go walk their dog is not a great comparison. So I think that door to door minus breaks might be the best way to communicate with other drivers about if rideshare is currently effective or not. So just something to keep in mind. Something I'm constantly thinking about. So the per hour on that is $37.02. And remember that number, because when we're gonna compare how much money I made to other drivers in my market, and then in that comparison, it shows you how much other drivers make per hour in my market, and we'll get to see the difference between what Tristan's strategy is versus whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing, but they need to watch my channel. I drove 1,889 miles. Slide over a little bit. So on a per mile rate, that's $1.06. If we go by the online miles that Lyft shows, it's going to say that probably I made about $2 per mile, which is why you should not be following booked miles, because there is driving that is done when the app is not on. And if you are relying on Uber and Lyft for your tax mileage, you are leaving money on the table. This is not an opinion. This is mathematically speaking. There are drivers who only go by their active miles and they don't track their miles outside of that. and they are losing money on their 67-cent deduction. This is not an opinion, this is math. So that's something to consider when you see other YouTubers not tracking their miles, So don't fall into that trap. It's easy to not do it. It's easy to not want to know your numbers, but we are a business. We need to treat this as a business and we need to look objectively at the numbers. So, objectively speaking, my total amount of driving so far in February, $1.06 mile. $1.06. I made $1.06 per mile. I don't know why I tripped up there so hard. So just keep that in mind. For expenses so far, 140. For expenses so far, I made $154 in expenses. I made 100, which works out to $2.86 per hour at a per mile rate of 8 cents. I don't have a car payment. I paid off my car in December. So, if you want to increase your monthly profits, you start paying off that debt. No car payment. I'm currently in the process of switching insurance. My insurance increased by like 50%. And we shopped around and I think we found a good deal. We haven't signed the form yet, but once I sign that form and it's in, which will be this week, probably today or tomorrow, I'll start adding my insurance here. We got a really good rate between me and my wife's car. It's like $230. I got to figure out what it is specifically for my car, and then I'll add it here. But even if we assume it's half, what is that? 65. So 230, 165. No, that's too high. It would be like 115 each car, kind of 230. Yeah. So 115-ish. That's pretty good. That's actually cheaper than what I was paying for before. So whenever your insurance is up for renewal, always shop around. My credit score has gone up since I paid off all of our debt except the student loans. And that will, factors into getting a cheaper insurance rate. So that's something you should consider. So pretty happy with that. We've paid $118.63. Now I haven't filled up my gas tank. Usually I fill it up at the end of the night so that I can have accurate numbers. So I'm plus or minus the gas tank right now. The gas tank is about $40. So we can say that I made $2,007 on, let's just round it up, $150 of gas, right? So that's kind of going back to that where I was saying earlier, where my expenses hover between 10 to 15%, right? So with this example, my gas bill is about like 6-7%. And of course there'll be other expenses, like my light bulb went out, and whenever my light bulb goes out, I buy two because the other one is probably going to go out soon as well, and I changed it myself. So the light bulb was $36.36, and then other things might pop up. My insurance needs to go on here, but I am doing my best to keep my expenses low. I changed my oil for the first time last week. I made a mistake and oil was all over the driveway, but we learn from it, we grow from it. And even with the mistake, even with me having to buy another canister of oil, it's still cheaper than what I would have had to have paid if I went to Jiffy Lube. So as rideshare drivers, we need to continuously look for ways to save money, especially in the face where, Uber and Lyft are kind of stepping on our necks with this whole external fee 70% thing. So that's something I really want to push. I want you guys to do it. Take the time to learn because it's important. Saving money is just as important as making money, right? Doesn't matter how much money you make if you don't get to keep it. So, and then over here, I have my little tax summary. So this calculates what my mileage write-off would be based off of the 67 cents per mile. So my write-off, so that means based off of how much I drove, my taxable income is lowered by this amount, the amount of $1,265.63. So then it does the math. It says, okay, Tristan made, that $2,007 subtracted by this tax write-off of $1,265. And we get a taxable income of $741.89. We're going to assume a tax rate of 15%. This number will change. This is kind of my placeholder number. When I do my taxes, and I haven't done them yet because I'm procrastinating, once I get that done, I will be able to see, when I receive money from Lyft versus what I pay the government, what is the nominal tax rate between those two things? And I'll use that to estimate my taxes for next year. Will it be accurate? But this is as accurate as it can be. And if you think there's something I can do to make it more accurate, let me know below. I'm shooting for accuracy here. I'm shooting for transparency here. I want you guys to believe me when I say things. And I believe the easiest way for you to believe me is by being accurate. So if I'm ever not being as accurate, or if I make mistakes, I'll walk it back. If you can prove I'm wrong, I'll walk it back, but I will push back because I obviously believe what I believe for a reason. You believe what you believe for a reason. So there's gonna have to be some friction in order for one of us to prove the other that there's a better way. So my true net, I really like this number because this gives me the best talking point when I'm speaking to other drivers. So when this is after expenses and this is after taxes. My true net, I made $2,007 so far in February. Out of that, I walk away with $1,741.25, which works out to an hourly of $32.11 after expenses and after taxes. And that's important. The reason why it's important, because I'm sure you've seen all these Business Insider articles with, oh man, this guy made $110,000, but he only gets to keep 13 according to the tax documents. But that's not the whole truth. We as rideshare drivers make tax-free dollars that don't get considered on our tax forms. That's just the way it is. If you keep, the government assumes 67 cents per mile in expenses. But if your actual expenses, right here for this example, is minus 8 cents per mile. So that means there's a 59-cent difference between what the government thinks I spend and what I actually spend. And that 59-cent difference is mine to keep tax free. So that number doesn't show up on your taxes. So that's why it's important to know what your true net is and what your true hourly is. That's what my spreadsheet does. And if you want this spreadsheet, you can get it. It's linked below. You can support me on Patreon for it. Don't think you're paying me for the spreadsheet. Think about it as you funding the community. I'm gonna put other things in there. I'm gonna put like a personal budget tracker. I have like someday I might make air fresheners that I might just give out to members. No extra cost, no nothing like that. So it's just you funding and being part of the community. And I actually have other plans for that as well. I don't want to spoil them right now, but this is like every data I have put into the spreadsheet for me is just to get to this number, to have the ability to easily see what is going into my pocket. And I think that is the most important number for rideshare drivers, period. How much money you make per mile, how much money you make per hour, none of that matters unless it's after expenses and it's after taxes. Like for an example, right? Let's just consider this for example. I don't have a car payment, right? So that lowers my expenses by a lot. So compared to someone who has like the average car payment right now is $700. If they have a $700 car payment and I'm making $1 per mile and they are making $1.20 per mile, who's making more money? Like on paper, sure, they're making more money, but if that doesn't include their expenses, who's really making more money? Like my expenses are really low. I've focused on in my personal life to get my expenses as low as possible. It takes time. It takes, you know, it's a constant thing. It's not something you do once. Like I'll spend a month getting rid of all my unnecessary subscriptions, and then over the course of 3 months, I'll fall back into some more unnecessary subscriptions, and I constantly have to keep going through and doing it every day. When I'm out there driving, I'm constantly faced with the idea that I want to waste money on fast food, and sometimes I lose that battle, and hopefully I'm winning more than I lose. If I look at my surge map and I'm like, oh man, I got to go right now, I don't have time to make sandwiches to carry with me, I lose that financial battle sometimes. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm able to prepare enough in order to make the food and bring it with me. So I'm not going to get on here and say to you, like, yeah, I've got it all figured out, I'm perfect with it. Nah, it's a daily struggle, guys. It's a daily struggle to keep your expenses low. It's a daily struggle to motivate yourself to go out there and drive. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I realized, and this is that personal thing I kind of wanted to share with you guys. I used to play sports growing up. And from the second I started playing sports, I never really stopped until I started working. And then when I worked like I was doing sports. It was constant. It was like, I'm going to work as much as possible. I'm going to put all the hours in. Eventually, it led me to becoming a district manager, becoming a store manager. I remember I worked and this is not bragging, this is an observation. I was a store manager and I didn't have a day off for 45 days because we were just short staffed, and it's my responsibility as a store manager to run it. And I was doing like 16-hour days for 45 days straight. Is that healthy? No. No. I'm not saying that you should go and do this, but for a long time, I put maximum effort into everything I did. And when I transitioned out of being a district manager into rideshare, I kind of chilled out. I kind of slowed down. I kind of lived life. I got fat. I got diabetes. Not anymore. I beat it. But I'm realizing that if I were an engine, I was always running. And then when I started doing rideshare, I slowed down. And then I'm learning that it takes me a while to warm back up to the state of constant work. And I want to get there, right? Because I have goals. I want to pay off my debt. And I'm really proud of myself last week because I that was like the fullest week I've had since the year started. And, I'm facing one minor setback. I have guests here who I want to spend time with. But, I might have to restart my engine because of it, get back into the rhythm and then keep the rhythm. But it's okay. Sacrifices happen. But yeah, so it's kind of what I wanted to share with you. And I'm slowly getting back to what I could call the old me. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you. So that's how much money I made. Let's check in on how much money other drivers have made. But before I do, I'm going to go and look at the comments. And while I'm looking at these comments, you tell me if there's a specific city that you want me to check in on. We can do it. There's an app that lets you do it. It's also linked below. We'll look at everyone. We'll look at my city, and then we'll look at LA, probably New York, the popular stuff. But if it's a specific city you want me to do, I'll do it. I'll probably only do three. We got to keep the time concise. But I'll check in the comments right now to see what you guys are saying. All right, let me make this bigger. There we go. 722 Marine says, "What up, though? The sky, my brother. The sky is up." Nah, man, I hope you're doing good. I hope you made some money last week. Hope you're all doing great. Jordan Wood says, "Good job protesting. Bye." I didn't protest, so I'm assuming that's sarcasm, and I assume he just wanted to come in here and say what he wanted to say and leave. But you're welcome here anytime, whether you like protesting or you don't like protesting. This is the place that I want you to be. You know, Silver Fox 88 says, I did a guarantee it's worth it if you do it fast. I like that. And I did think about that. I was thinking that maybe I should just do it over the course of 2 weeks instead of trying to drag it out for the full 30 days. So that's something I'll consider. What I'll probably do is maybe I'll just drive Lyft when it's busy for like 8 hours. And then I'll do like maybe 4 hours a day on Uber during like dead periods, like maybe between 9 a.m. and like 2 a.m. before traffic starts. So we'll test it, right? I'll test it for a couple days and then I think I'll have a good grasp of what to do in full. So I'll definitely check it out. Lewis says, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. You are making good money. Personally, I wouldn't trust the guarantee pay because they can throttle you. That's a good point. I super agree with the first point. I'm kind of whatever on the second point just because of how much time I have to do it. And what I do care about my acceptance rate on Lyft because I find immense value in being a platinum driver. I'm actually trying to get to elite driver status. I've never been moved on from the lowest tier in Uber. So I don't mind my acceptance rate tanking on Uber. So what I'll probably do is I'll go downtown and I'll only accept rides at like maybe $5. I'll probably do that for a day, 2 or 3. And then I can see what this looks like in the longevity of it all. So I'll probably do it that way. So I'm not worried about being throttled as long as I'm on top of it, right? If I wait till the last week to do 100 rides, then yeah, sure, the throttling thing might happen. That at that point, that failure is on me because I waited too long, So I'm not too worried about that. Silver Fox 88 says, I've seen your channel for a min. Don't really see your strategy. I have some videos that detail my strategy. If you started watching during the podcasting era, this format I'm doing right now is actually like maybe 2 months old. What I need to do a better job is on my homepage. I need to highlight the strategy videos, but I do have a couple. Those videos take a lot longer to produce. So I haven't done anything full with those, but me and my editor, we're slowly working towards getting those once a week. Maybe it'll be once every other week where, I sit down, I script, I have my recordings of like what I'm actually doing. The next big one that I'm planning, I already wrote down some of it already. I've kind of figured out, I think it's like 4 or 5 different ways to predict where bonuses are going to appear on the map. So that's strategy based. I need to just get that video done. I know it would perform well, but it's a huge time commitment. I did this podcasting format because I was sacrificing my time making money with my time editing. And because my goals, I have personal financial goals to be debt free by the end of this year, and that's going to require a lot of driving. So I knew I needed to find a better balance between my YouTube stuff and driving, which is how this podcast format came up. It's a lot more difficult for me to sit here and tell you what the strategies are without the screen recordings and the B-roll that I have to prove it and like how it actually works. It's always easier to show something than it is to tell something. So I would have to, like, for example, like when I drove last week, I recorded my screen, right? But each day, if I'm driving 12 hours, that's 12 hours of video footage recording that I have to go through in order to find the examples that I'm talking about. So it's not what you think goes into those videos that I make is a lot more work than even I thought they would be when I first became a YouTuber. So it will take time. It does take effort, but it is on my mind, and I'm trying my best to slowly figure out how to get back to those kinds of videos without um, hurting myself. Right. But this week, like I said earlier, I have people over the house and I won't be driving as much this week because, they're my friends. I want to entertain them. They're here. I can't just be out there 12 hours a day. So maybe that'll help me make enough videos to where I can kind of start focusing on those more in-depth videos. I also want to make beginner videos too. You guys probably don't care too much about that, but from the perspective of a YouTuber, my largest potential audience will always be new people. So, but I do have something planned. I am gonna rebrand at 10,000 subscribers, and I'm gonna create a place where we can go and be a community outside of YouTube. So look forward to that. We'll talk more about it as it happens. Sean says, "Where were you a DM at, man?" I don't really know what you're asking. Where were you a direct message is what DM means in my head. At, man. So I'm not quite sure. Are you asking me where you should DM me at? Um, Twitter, probably the best place to go. Tristan Thomas YT. If this is what you're asking, you can just find me on X or Twitter, whatever it's called. Tristan Thomas YT. I also have it linked directly in the description of every single video where it says, follow me. My Facebook page is there. I have a Discord. Maybe Discord might be better. Oh, district manager. Thanks. I was a district manager for a place called Parker's Kitchen. I was a district manager over the kitchen section. It's based out of Savannah. Before that, I was a store manager for Pizza Hut, several different Pizza Huts. And before I actually was a district manager at Parker's, I quit, went back to Pizza Hut for a little while, and then I quit and then started doing Rideshare. So, all right, so let's start jumping into looking at how much other drivers made last week, see if anyone else capitalized from the strike. So before I do, I always point this out. This is my area. The average Uber driver is making $22 an hour in my area. The average Lyft driver is making $17 an hour in my area. And this is up 10%. Like I just showed you guys how much I'm making on average, even after taxes and expenses. I'm making $32.11 after taxes and expenses in comparison to other people in my market. That's almost double, a little less than double. $2 more, it would be double. So I'm essentially doubling what I'm making compared to other drivers in my market. Here's the leaderboard. I made $1,257 last week, which to me, that my minimum goal is $2,000. And that's high minimum. That's because I want to make 100K this year. 2,000 times 52 is 4,000, something like that. So that's why that's what my goal is. I think any driver who can make 1,200 a week and they have a good expense ratio, they're doing okay. I think that, you're doing okay. Like I worked maybe 40 hours last week and I made 1,257. I think that's okay. So I if that's what you're doing, I think you're doing okay. Even at 1,000, depending on your expenses, depending on how many incomes are in your household, that's okay. Right? I want you to be better than okay, but I think that's okay. So number one last week is from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I don't know how that happened. I think there was a snowstorm. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not looking it up. But the number one person made $3,472 last week with Uber and Lyft in Bridgeport, Connecticut. That's a lot of money. I've never made that much. I've only ever made 3,000. And I could have made more, but a lot would have to go right for me to make 3,500. And I actually don't think I could probably barely do it. And it would have to be like the best week of the year in my market. So I could probably do it, but man, shout outs to whoever did that. You did a great job. Number two is Austin, Texas, $2,667. Number three, Spartanburg, South Carolina, not far from where I am. I believe that's a college town. And he made $2,637 on just Uber Eats, Lyft, and DoorDash. So he's probably making some really good money on food, probably hops on Lyft in between, but I'm assuming he's doing very, very well in that town with the food delivery. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, $2,548 with DoorDash. Bloomington, Bedford, $2,503 on Uber. New York, my hometown, $2,467 on DoorDash. We got California in the mix, $2,367 at number 7. At number 8, we have New Orleans, $2,347. Number 9, Arizona jumping in with DoorDash and Grubhub at $2,333. San Francisco's in here at $2,254 using Uber and Uber Eats. And that is the top 10 drivers on this app, which you can find in the description. But keep in mind, this only shows what people on the app who have the app downloaded and have connected their accounts have made. This isn't all Uber and Lyft drivers. These guys probably aren't the highest earners, period, right? Number 1 might be number 1, but number 2 might be number 5. Number 7 might be number 14. There are other drivers out there that are not on this list, and we don't know how many hours these guys are working. I wish that it showed us this, but it doesn't. But this is, I think, the best place to see how much drivers are making in other markets. And if you ever want to know specific markets, right, you can go, there's a button here, it says all metros, and it shows you all the different markets, but it is only in America. We tried looking for Canada before, and it's not located here. So I always like to see, let's go to that. Let's see how many drivers made over $1,000 last week, right? We might have to scroll for a little bit. And I do this not because I'm saying that you should just make $1,000 every week. I do this because it gives me a sense of how well or poorly the rideshare market across the nation is doing. And as I've seen since January, since December, we're slowly on the up and up, right? There are specific events that happen that might cause a region of America to make more money. For example, if there's a snowstorm in the Northeast, you're gonna see a bunch of Eastern states up there, and you like no Western states were there like a couple weeks ago. This is the longest I've scrolled ever since I've been doing this live stream to get to the $1,000 mark. So we're already seeing that there's over 250 drivers that have made over $1,000, and we're only at the $1,200 range. So, like I said, if you're making this, that's okay, right? Don't see me making $2,000 a week and you're not making $2,000 a week. You feel bad. I want you to make $2,000 a week, but if you're able to do $1,000 a week, you're probably doing better than most of America, not just with rideshare, like period. And we're talking about $4,000 a month times 12. That's 48,000. That's a little less than the median household, but that's household, right? That's two income parents that we're comparing to. So if you're a single person making $1,000 a week, hopefully you're not a single parent. It's not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad. If you have your expenses in check, which honestly, the problem with most Americans is our expenses are unchecked. We go and make more money and then we also increase our expenses. I'm still scrolling. So I'm talking your ears off, but it's because I'm still scrolling. And we're like 500 deep. We're getting close though. But man, the average, I think last week was probably the best week overall, right? For drivers, because this is a lot of scrolling that I'm doing right now. We're so close. We're at 1,002, 1,001. All right, here we go. The cutoff. The cutoff is Memphis, Tennessee. He made $999. Someone needs to go and tip him. But 703 drivers across America who have this app made over $1,000. And I'm glad. I want you guys to be making money. I know winter is really bad for rideshare in most markets, and we suffered this winter. This winter was the hardest winter I've seen since the pandemic, and well, I started during the pandemic. So I'm happy drivers are making money. It's not great. $1,000 is not great, like I've been saying, but I'm happy that overall more people are making more money. It makes me glad. Okay. I am going to do one more check in with the comments to see if you guys have any specific requests, and then we're going to start digging into the news stories. And don't forget, I'm going to show you guys the process of buying a Tesla today. I'm going to try to buy a Tesla. I'm going to try to get insurance for the Tesla. We're going to price it out. We're going to see if it's worth it for rideshare. So Dasher and etc. I think says I do Uber Eats mostly Walmart orders. I'm in Mount Pleasant. Do Uber or Lyft tell you how much people get in your car? No, Uber and Lyft do not tell you how many people get in your car. Funny you say that. I saw someone driving around on Valentine's Day. She had a big teddy bear in her front seat. She had a five-seater, her and then four others. You are required to have four people in your car. I mean, if you want to cancel, you can, right? But the expectation is up to four people can go into a small car, unless they order an XL, where the expectation is now seven, including the front seat. Is so Dasher, do you just is that your fare? You just don't want people sitting in your front? Because I'm in Charleston, you're Mount Pleasant, so I can say that if you drive during the early mornings and the days, the chances of four people getting in your car are a lot lower than if you do parties, because people group up for parties when they're going out drinking and doing whatever. Sometimes for airport rides in the morning, you might get a full family, but it doesn't always happen that way. So if that's what your main concern is, you can kind of alter when you drive, but then I would also challenge you to get rid of that concern. That's what I would say. If you're a woman, I understand the safety stuff that go involved with it. Well, I understand that I don't understand, right? I understand that there are things that you're faced with that I'm not faced with. If you're not a woman and you just don't want people in front, I mean, like, is that more important than making money? You know, I can't pronounce this. This looks like it's Jewish. I don't know what this is, but this looks Jewish. But I could also be wrong. But welcome. It says I'm in Modesto, California. Would it be worth it to drive to San Jose or San Francisco, which is 2 hours away? First, let me look at Modesto. Let's see if it's even on the list. And I already have an opinion, but I'm not familiar with Modesto. Oh my God, I gotta scroll all the way back up. Oh, I'm just gonna, oh my God. Hopefully if I re-click it, insights, leaderboard. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm just gonna close it. And then I'm gonna try to open it again. Give me a second so I can get this open. There we go. Insights. Leaderboard. Modesto, down in the M's. So 2 hours is a long time. You're talking about 4 hours round trip. The obvious thing I'll say for now while I'm scrolling is that the longer you stay in that city, the better it might be. You could do events, right? If Taylor Swift's coming to town, maybe if you have people there, you say, "Oh, can I crash on your couch?" Or you get a really, really, really cheap hotel. Um, just don't get too close to the prostitutes and the drug people. But it might be worth it for a weekend. You go, you spend a weekend, maybe you pack a bag, you find a gas station that has showers, and you do it that way. Some people do that. That's something I would do. Like if I was like really down and out, really struggling, and then I really needed to hustle and make some money, that's something that I would do. So Modesto's here, but no one is showing up as Modesto. So yeah, I would pick specific events. And then one thing that you're just going to be disadvantaged at by not living where you work is that it's going to take you longer to know the market. And that's a big part of it. So the only way to really tell if it's worth it is by trying and error, you know. Um that's really it. I don't know how big your family is, but people from rideshare don't like hearing this, but people move all the time for work. And I probably would move out of California, but that's probably not an option for everyone. But I would consider, maybe you don't move 2 hours to LA. It's expensive, right? Maybe you move an hour closer. That's not unreasonable. Or maybe if you have the ride filters with Lyft, you can head towards a destination. So there might be people you are able to pick up as you're heading from Modesto to LA or San Jose or wherever, right? Maybe you might not get them for the whole 2 hours. You might get them for an hour. You might get them for 30 minutes. And then it might be the same case back. And then eventually, if you do it long enough, you might find someone who is routinely taking that ride, who routinely schedule rides that you can say, all right, you put it in the Lyft app and I'll grab it or whatever. Or if you want to get your proper licenses to do private rides so that you don't get in trouble and the proper insurances, you can then take that cash ride, right? Just make sure you do it properly and don't get in trouble. There are tricks to it. And while you're learning those tricks to it, you might take a loss, right? It might not be worth it like on paper, but over time, depending on the situation, depending on how you do it, if you're going for the football games, if you're going for the basketball games, if you're going for specific events, like what you need to do is break out your Google Calendar and you need to look at all the events and the towns that are around you that you're willing to drive towards. And that's how you make your decision, and then you can start building a strategy for getting there without paying out of like without deadheading as much as possible. So that's how I would do it. Um, Sometimes I do that here. Like I know Savannah has the biggest St. Patrick's Day celebration on the southeast coast, and for St. Patrick's Day, Savannah's 2 hours away from me. I'll go. I'll drive 2 hours St. Patty's Day, and I'll run that for 16 hours. I'll do 8 hours, take a break, chill out. Go to the bathroom, wash my face. If they're like wet body like disposable rags you can get. Make sure you're staying fresh. You don't want to be stinky in someone else's car. And I'll drive that entire day. So um it's all about what you're willing to do and the amount of effort and patience you're going to have to figuring out the best strategy for an unknown market. So Kenrick says, Beckett, yo. Kenrick Beckett says, yo, hello. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well, man. Always think about you. At least once a month, I think about you. Hope you're doing well. Coding up storms out there, making that money. I always hope you're doing well. Papa Just 69 says, question, do you deny a lot of rides? Is it better to be selective? Let me show you my acceptance rate. Give me a second. I'm gonna navigate to it because I want you guys to see where I live or my license plate. I don't really know if that stuff is important for people not to know, but my life is not just my own. I have a wife, and so I have to take security a little more seriously than by myself. So hold on, I'm navigating to it. All right, so here's my driving score. Currently 88% overall. And my acceptance rate, right? So this acceptance rate right here is 84% out of 95%. When it is busy and there are a lot of bonuses, I am more likely to decline rides. But when it is slow and it really doesn't matter, I just keep moving. I find that I make more money per day if I'm just moving than if I'm just sitting there and what people call cherry picking. But all right, let's talk about cherry picking. I love to talk about cherry picking because despite what I just said, despite the fact that you see my acceptance rate, I cherry pick. And I think my method of cherry picking is better than all the other YouTubers who are talking about cherry picking. And the reason I say that is because I cherry pick the best times to drive, right? If I'm picking the best times to drive, then that means that the rides that do show up are typically good rides to take. But you can't do that unless you're, one, understand your market, and two, are willing to work during those times. A lot of independent contractors, they don't like to, they've said, I chose this for freedom, so therefore I'm going to work when I want to work. And then there's a lot of drivers in my town, and I suspect some of the people who are making $17 an hour, like compared to my $32 an hour, I suspect they're like, nah, I'm just going to work 9 to 5 every day because that's what I want to do. And that's technically okay. If that's what you want to do and you're not complaining about pay, that's fine. But if you want to maximize your income, you need to be driving when the bars are letting out. You need to be driving at 3 a.m. On the weekdays, I typically wake up at like 3 a.m. so that I can get downtown in time to take people to the airport because I know that's when the surges will start. Like I know my market like the back of my hand. I'm able to predict not just when bonuses will appear, but where they will appear. Now, how much they appear as, that's supply and demand algorithm. Can't really get that detailed. But when you cherry pick the best days, the best times, the best places to drive, you're gonna find yourself having to cherry pick the individual rides a lot less. So that's something I want you to consider when you hear other YouTubers, other drivers talking about, oh, I cherry pick, what is it called? Recline and decline. And then, like I watched some of these YouTubers, they put up like full screen shares of like their day driving, and they'll start their day at like 9 a.m., 8 a.m. But what's happening at 8 a.m.? What's happening at 9 a.m.? There's traffic. We get paid more per mile than we do per time, right? Even with upfront pay, based it's still an algorithm. And you might have noticed if you ever are waiting with someone at a stop, the pay doesn't dramatically change. But if a ride's distance changes, like they at a stop that's completely out the way, then you're starting to pay more money. So always figure out the best time to drive is. Generally speaking, you shouldn't be driving during traffic. However, I'm currently playing around with some strategies that allow me to navigate that. For example, if I know the flow of traffic in the morning goes from uptown to downtown, that's so if I'm trying to go downtown from uptown that there's traffic, what I'll do is before traffic starts, I'll make sure I'm downtown. And in my city, there's not a lot of traffic once you are downtown. So I'll drive there for a while. And whenever I want to leave, I know there's no traffic to go back home uptown, right? And I can do the opposite. So that's what I do in the morning. Opposite will be I know that heading downtown, I'm not going to have any traffic. So at 5 p.m., when there's a bunch of traffic going uptown, I know that while I'm heading downtown, there won't be any traffic. But the caveat is if I stay downtown using the area filter, I have to stay downtown until traffic is done, because if I try to go home or if I take a ride that's going with traffic, it's not going to be a pretty picture, right? So I am playing around with that. But overall, I still think that driving late nights when there are no cars on the road, where other drivers typically don't like to drive as well, so the supply and demand gets better. I think that's like the best time to drive in my market, right? This is like this whole cherry picking thing is also going to be true for like inclement weather. If there's snowstorms or if there's flooding happening, less drivers are going to want to drive and more people are not going to want to walk. So there's going to be higher demand. So you need to cherry pick that, right? So to me, cherry picking, the best form of cherry picking is just cherry picking the correct times to drive. And then you can keep your acceptance rate up. For Lyft, it's really important for me to keep my acceptance rate up. I get 7% cash back on gas with the Lyft card for being a platinum driver. They do have a new tier called Elite. I'm going to try to hit it this weekend. It's my last week to try to hit it, and I've never had it before. It's kind of brand new. But if you're an Elite driver, you get 10% cash back. And to me, that's worth it. So sometimes what I'll do is, I knew leading up to Valentine's Day, what I'll do is I'll start accepting more rides, even if they're not the greatest rides, just so that I can pad my acceptance rate enough to where I can be more choosy during Valentine's Day or during, whatever events happen or during the Saturday. So there is some play with it. It's not always all that great, but overall, I'd rather cherry picking my time leads me to be able to keep the tools that help me make more money. For example, one of the tools I use is to stay within an area filter. As a platinum driver, I get 4 uses of those tools. If you're not a platinum driver, you only get 2 uses of those tools, and they only last 3 hours each. So if you only get 2 uses, that means you can only use it for 6 hours. Well, what if I want to drive for 12 hours? Now I don't have an area filter to use, which now I have to cherry pick my rides because I don't want to take a ride that's going to take me too far, and I don't have the area filter to stop me from going too far. But as a platinum driver, I have 4 uses, and at 3 hours per use, that's 12 hours. But we can drive up to 18 hours per day. Not a recommendation, just something that can be happen. And if you get Elite, you now get 6 instances for 18 hours. And maybe I don't drive the 18 hours. Maybe I go online during traffic time. I use the head towards a destination filter to head downtown so that I'm only picking up rides that are going towards downtown, which is the opposite direction of traffic. So there's no traffic going downtown, so I'm only want rides that take me downtown. And then once I'm downtown, I use one area filter to get downtown, right? So start with 4, use one area filter to get downtown. Now that I am downtown, I use to stay within an area filter to stay downtown, right? And maybe I do that for 6 hours. So I use 2 stay within an area filters. And then you know what? It's time to go home. but I only want rides that will take me home. Then I'm going to use my head towards destination filter. So having these tools are very important for me. So I do have to find that middle ground between cherry picking the correct times to drive, so I'm not over cherry picking rides, so that I can use these filters. They're very important for me. Good question. This whole talk I just did is going to be a video. So I'm glad you asked that question. That was a really good question. So let's go back to over here. Let's see what other questions are here. Francisco says, I live in Myrtle Beach. I also hope you love it, but I think that's a typo. I live in Myrtle Beach. No, I live in Myrtle Beach. Slow. Where would you drive in Charleston? Just I would just set an area filter downtown Charleston. I know Myrtle Beach has its ebbs and flows. You guys have some huge concerts, and I know a couple of you drivers like to come down here to Charleston and take money from us, but I'm okay with that. I'm a competitive person, and I think I can out earn anyone, even when it's slow. So come on down. But like I said, like I told the guy who was asking earlier, should he go and work in these areas around where he lives? You're at a disadvantage because you got to put more effort into learning the market. One tip I will say is don't go to the airport. Like, airport rides are fine, but don't wait at the airport for airport rides. If you get one naturally, that's fine. But it's kind of up to you to learn the market. I do have videos that break down strategies, and you can kind of peek through to my market to like what works for me, what doesn't work. But you still have to do it. Are you gonna wake up at 1 a.m., drive 2 hours to get to Charleston by 3 a.m. to do airport rides? Like, what kind of sacrifices are you truly gonna do? Like, I can tell you the strategy, but the execution of it. And that's kind of why I'm okay with this. I had to accept that as a YouTuber, I would be giving game to people who also live in my market. And that game is a competition to me. Saturation is a thing that drivers have to worry about. But I am confident in my ability to outgrind people, right? Even if I'm making $20 an hour because the market's so saturated, I know I'll work the 80 hours a week if I have to, if that's what's required of me. Do I want to do that? No, it sucks. But most drivers aren't going to do that. And I know I'll be able to outgrind them regardless. So, I mean, where should you drive in direct? Like, just Charleston, just downtown Charleston. Like, there's Somerville, there's West Ashley, like just downtown Charleston, set an area filter during like the weekends, and then just stay there. That area filter isn't that great for airport rides because it's outside of the area filter. So what I like to do, and here's some like free game for everyone, is even though you set the area filter, that doesn't mean never take rides that take you out, right? If it's 3 a.m., I go downtown, I know that I'm not going to get a lot of rides from downtown to downtown. I'll still set the area filter so that I can let the bonuses stack up. And then with the area filter, if there's a ride that's starting within your area but is going outside of the filter, it'll pop up on the map and you can pick it, and it'll show you how much the ride is going to pay. It'll show you exactly where it's going. Some of you might see this when you're not online and you see them pop up, but when you click on it, it doesn't really give you any information. This one gives you more information. So if I'm sitting on bonuses, I'll wait for the bonuses to accumulate. I have an $8 bonus. I see an airport ride for $12, not including the bonus. That's $20. I'm going to take it. That's part of the strategy. It's not a flaw. I'm not just taking it because, nothing else is happening. I know at 3 a.m. there's not going to be people going from downtown Charleston to downtown Charleston. Everyone's asleep. The only people who are awake are people who are trying to go to work. So sometimes I'll get some nurses or people who are trying to go to the airport. So that's one strategy right there. It's a really good strategy, and you're welcome. If you found that helpful, make sure you like this video and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss future strategies. Well, let's go back to the comments. Because I live in Myrtle Beach, what is the best time and days to drive in Charleston? I mean, Tuesday, Wednesday is the slowest days. The 5 best days are the other days. Friday, Saturday night is probably the best time to drive in Charleston. Saturday night's the busiest night. Saturday into Sunday morning is great for airport rides. Sunday night into Monday morning is also great for airport rides. But that's just like general. You still should get your iCalendar, get your Google Calendar, check out when events are happening and pay attention to those events. Pay attention to the concerts. Cat Williams is coming in March. Pay attention to that. All of that plays a role into it. You have to be on top of it. You have to be on top of the weather. Like, Sundays, you really should be planning your week. What is the weather going to look like? Even though the weather people are always wrong, you get an idea. If it says it's going to rain Wednesday, it still might rain Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. So it's like there's so much that goes into it. There's so much legwork you can do. And I've had people say, I don't feel like doing all that work. I shouldn't have to do all that work. But this isn't about what you should or shouldn't have to do. This is about what you can do or what you're not going to do to make more money. That's all it really boils down to. One of my favorite quotes from Pirates of the Caribbean: it's only two things that matter: what a man can do and what a man can't do. And if you don't want to do it, then you're not going to reap the rewards of what would happen if you did do it. So Meg says, just tuned in the first 10 seconds, I already learned something new. I am glad. I try to teach people new things. Sometimes, because I've been doing this for a while, I forget that some people don't even have like the fundamentals down, or like the obvious things, the things I think are obvious. And I'm gonna create a very beginner friendly course, in the sense that I'm gonna explain A through Z in a beginner friendly way, but that doesn't mean there won't be advanced things in there. It's just let's start from A and let's get to Z, and let's over explain as much as possible, because sometimes when you've been doing something for so long, you forget the intricacies. You forget that not everyone understands the building blocks that lead up to like this crazy strategy. 100K delivery driver says, why not run 4 to 5 apps? Just work app that pays best in the moment instead of just rideshare, especially with the amount of hours you're working. I have access to all the apps. There's no app that is major that I don't have. And I test them out over time. When I first started, I started with grocery deliveries, started with food deliveries, and time again. And I'll go back and recheck. I believe you should establish something and always recheck depending on the season. And I found that rideshare in my market pays about double what everything else pays. Now, that's not always true. When the students are gone and there's a lot less traffic on the road, the college students are gone, the elementary, high school kids are out of school, I find that Walmart, Spark, and grocery deliveries are good. Grocery deliveries are only good when there's no traffic. The problem is grocery delivery hours are usually during traffic. Like the first time you can get like an order from Walmart Spark is 7 a.m. and up until I think it's like 8 p.m., right? If there's traffic, it's not worth it. But if there isn't traffic, which the only time there's not traffic is when the kids are out. And then during those time periods, because I live in a tourist city, Uber and Lyft slow down tremendously. So doing food deliveries and grocery deliveries during that time period is better, or comparable, I should say. There's plus or minuses to it. So that's when I would switch. So it's not that I'm not doing other apps. It's that for majority of the year, Uber and Lyft is where it's at. But I'm always testing. I'm always trying new things. And sometimes I'll do Uber Eats just to hit a quest easy. But the individual pay on that is just not that great. So, but and it's not just the money part. There's some times where I'm burnt out. I don't want to talk to people. I kind of, I'm tired of sitting all the time. So I'll do groceries. It gets me a little more exercise. It gets me moving differently. It gives me that space to think and just, recollect myself. So there are some non-financial aspects and benefits to doing something other than driving people around. Something I would like to do, or something I did in the past, but I I effed it up. I used to flip couches. I'll tell you a little bit about the couch flipping. This is something anyone can start. So whenever I start something, first I test. So before I quit my job as a district manager or a store manager, whatever, to do Uber and Lyft, I tested it. I actually tested it with Instacart. I went out on a Saturday, I did it, I looked at the hourly, and then I started thinking, how many hours would I have to do? Let me keep doing this for a little bit. I tested it. I didn't just quit. Don't do that. So even with couch flipping, what I did was I got a U-Haul, and they're expensive if you put miles on them. But what I did is I went on Facebook Marketplace. I looked up couches. I can do this. You know what? What is it? 509. Do I want to do this right now? Do I want to show you guys how easy it could be? Yeah. I think it's worth showing you guys, because some of you might be inspired enough to do it, and you can make some great cash like this. Very, very, very easy way to make money. I'm gonna go to my Facebook. I'll pull it up in a second once I'm sure I'm not showing my location or anything like that. Gotta protect the people in my household. So we're gonna go to Marketplace. Let me make sure I gotta change the location of Marketplace to where I actually live. Sometimes I'll look around surrounding areas, especially when I'm like looking at car prices. I like to stay in tune. I plan on buying a Prius at some point, so I like to stay in tune with where the market's going. So hold on, give me a second. Here we go. Charleston, New York. Come on. Okay, here we go. All right, I'm pretty confident it's not going to show my address. So this is Facebook Marketplace. Um, I put it on Charleston. I'm going to increase the radius to, well, for couch flipping, you actually want to keep it small, right? So that's too small. We'll do 20 miles. Nope, that's still too small. We'll do, can I move this pin around? It won't let me. We'll do, Orangeburg is too far. All right, 40 miles. We'll do 40 miles. We'll apply that. And then we're going to look for couches, right? So I used to flip couches, and that just means you buy them and then you resell them. Let me zoom in a little more for you guys. There we go. All right, so look at this. This is a couch for $180. There's no major defects here. It just looks like no rips, no tears, no pets, smoke free, converts to sleeper, comes with cup holders, right? It looks like they just want to get rid of it. They might be replacing it. I could probably reflip this for $250. And the reason why you're able to get things like significantly cheaper, look at this one is free, right? Free reclining sofa, no rips that we can see, right? You're not gonna know the smell, but that's fine. There are no rips. This looks like pretty good quality. 2 power recliner sofas. Take both or just one. They both still work. You must pick it up. They are heavy. Probably want to clean because I have dogs in my home. So that's easy vacuum. You take the cloth off, throw it in your washing machine. The reason why you can get these so cheap and for free is because people don't have the ability to transport them. So what I would do is I would pick a day, right? I usually did it on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I would schedule a bunch of pickups. And then I would rent a U-Haul truck. This is when I was testing it. I'd rent the U-Haul truck. I would get these couches. I got a storage unit. I have a video on this. It's buried deep in my channel, but it was never popular because rideshare became popular. But yeah, I used the government stimulus check of that $1,200 they gave. I used that and got the U-Haul. I'd bring it to the storage unit. I would clean it. I'd have vacuum. I have like a water vacuum too for like spots remover and things like that. And I would I remember buying a couch, like a sectional. Sectionals are where the money's at. I bought a sectional for $150 and I resold it for $750. Right. I was doing all the carrying myself. I would honestly work best with someone, but typically, they don't know you're a business going to get this couch. Just think you're a person who wants this couch. So usually I'd be like, hey, will someone be there to help me with this couch if it's like, up a lot of floors? So very easy. And once I tested it and once I realized like this is the thing. See, this guy right here, he's couch flipping. You can tell because he has the storage unit in the back. This is a nice sectional. He did drop the price. 1,200 is pretty high, but he probably paid like maybe 300 for this. So he's doing what he's doing. He probably cleaned it himself and all of that. So once I tested that this is a thing that is viable, I went out and got a pickup truck for about $2,000. The pickup truck was beat up. It was a 1992, but it only had 80,000 miles. It drove and it worked. It got T-boned. The frame was still fine. They never really repaired the dent, but that was fine. It was a work truck. It's a workhorse. It was a 10-foot bed, and I don't have enough driveway to fit this in my driveway. So I parked it at an apartment complex during COVID. It was really hard to get it registered because the government was moving really slow during COVID. And like 2 months went by, I never checked on it, and they towed it. And then the price of the tow was $3,000, and I decided I'm not paying $3,000 to receive a truck back that I paid $2,000 for. But this is something where I might start back again, right? If I had a house that could sustain a truck, and maybe if I had a garage where I can keep the cars in the garage, therefore lowering my expenses even more, I would do it. But for those of you who are looking for other options, right? I'm not saying do this instead of rideshare. This is something you can do on top of rideshare. If you have a truck, or if you know someone who does have a truck who you want to go and partner with and split the profits, there's YouTube channels for this. I have a video on it. It's old. You'd have to find it, but this is a viable option. I don't remember why I started talking about this. It must have been a comment. All right, so 4 to 5 apps. So yeah, it was tied to that 4 to 5 apps. The Amazing Network says, shout out to Tristan in the chat. Good live. I appreciate it, man. And I see that you're kind of doing something similar. Just keep going, keep going. Always try to improve the quality of it. Start being more intentional about how you set up your categories. Like make sure they flow into the next, and just keep doing it, keep pushing it. It's hard to switch from one thing to another. So good luck with that. Francisco says, nice, thanks. Papa Just 69 says, thank you for answering my question. I got you, bro. The Money Alley says, no offense, but some white folk you pick up funky scent. I don't know how to describe it. The Money says, can you sell small bottles of liquor and energy drinks? Nah, I can't sell no liquor. I'm careful. I have to be worried about shipping. Oh well, you mean like to other people? So you probably can't sell liquor, but you could probably sell energy drinks. There's nothing wrong with that. A company reached out to me. They kind of have like a vending machine for the back seat. I'll show you guys very quickly. Vending machine, Uber, Lyft. Let's see if that works. Mashable. Um, hmm. It's not this. They reached out to me. I can't remember the name of them, but it's pretty much like, well, this is cool. Okay, all right. This is gonna be a separate video. I might get too deep into it, and we haven't really started talking about the stories. So before we dive into the rest of the podcast, we already talked about how much I made. We already talked about how much other drivers are making. And now we want to kind of like look at the aftermath of the strike. And that's what these next couple stories look at. And then at the end, probably the end, because I have to go. I have friends here. I got to entertain them. I can't be a rude guest, guys. I'm gonna buy a Tesla, and I'm gonna show you how much it costs, how much the insurance costs, and we're gonna compare it to other options out there. So make sure you stick around for that. But that's I might speed run through this because we are running low on time. So I might not be checking in with the comments as often, but one of my favorite parts of going live is communicating with you guys, reading the comments. They do take time, and I do try to read all of them. But as I'm running out of time right now, it's 5:16. I'm trying to end at around 6 o'clock. I have to kind of speed through it. So let's start with the aftermath of the strike, which that's just an article we're going to read. And then we're going to look at live footage from the strike. And then we're going to look at how what other drivers are saying about the strike. And if you missed what I said about the strike, I acknowledged that the money I made on Wednesday was higher because people were striking. I'm not saying that to make fun of them. I am acknowledging that um, some of my income, I'm thankful for all the money I'm able to make, and I have to also, it doesn't sit right with me not to acknowledge the fact that some of the income I made last week was off of the backs of other people who are fighting for things that might benefit me. So it's not above me to acknowledge that, and I want to make sure I do acknowledge that. But for those of you who don't know me very well, my long-term gain isn't about Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft to me is a stepping stone. Let me go big screen here. So Uber, all right, yeah, it's important to talk about before we start talking about the strike. Someone left a comment and they said that I felt disingenuous, and it struck a nerve because I never tried to use the strike as like a way to increase my views or subscribers, right? I would get more views and more subscribers if I was full on support of the strike. And I do support the strike. I'm just not striking because what I have going on personally, financially, is more important than everything else that's going on. What I do for my household, paying off my debt, is more important for me. I don't plan on being a rideshare driver for 2 years. Like, this is not a long-term thing for me. I've been here longer than I've already wanted to. And most people who become Uber and Lyft drivers, it's something that we fall into, but then we realize how cool it really is and we stay in it. So part of me will always be part of the rideshare community. Even if I go out and start buying house rentals, my foundation at my core, the thing that put me in the position to step up into a life where I'm able to do that, is the freedom that rideshare gave me. If I'm ever a successful YouTuber, once I'm debt free, I plan on starting different YouTube channels. And if that's ever successful, the core of why I was successful was the freedom and the ability to make as much money as possible to pay off my debt, which lowers my income, which gives me the time to make the videos that I want to make. I will always have to acknowledge that rideshare is going to be part of whatever future success that I have. So I'm acknowledging that, but I do not do not think it is wise to make rideshare a long-term play. You cannot, you can technically retire with rideshare, but keep in mind, right? Uber and Lyft have both put out press releases that have said they want to replace us with self-driving cars. You can disagree with whether they will be able to accomplish it. That's not the discussion we're having. We are talking about it's this is similar to your parents saying to your face that they do not want you in their house. That is the equivalence. They do not want you in your house, even though they're feeding you. They're doing the parent thing, but you still will feel less loved. So it's like you 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 wouldn't make a plan to stay in your parents' house as long as possible when they're making it clear they don't want you here. If you turn 18 and you haven't like started figuring out a way to leave, you're setting yourself up for failure in that scenario. It's just like Uber and Lyft. Even if they fail to replace us with self-driving cars, they have made it, they've said that they want to replace us with self-driving cars. Why would you want to hang the future of your finances on companies who have said that? That's where I'm at. So that's one. And then two, we can strike, right? We can be successful. But under that, one, government moves very slow. If we get some changes enacted via government, it's going to take a while. Even the changes that happened in New York City, that started happening like 2-3 years ago. That's the result of some of court cases that's been going on for 2 to 3 years. Are you going to be here in 2 to 3 years? I don't want you to be here in 2 to 3 years, right? At least, at minimum, I don't want you to have to be here. If you want to be a rideshare driver for as long as possible, fine. But if you're going to be a rideshare driver and not have an exit strategy that you've been working on and saving for, so that when we're not making enough anymore, that you can say, all right, I'm done with this. That's at minimum where I would like for you guys to be. At minimum, have your exit strategy planned and put yourself in a position to execute it when things get really shitty. So that's at minimum what I want from you guys. And then two, just because a change is made doesn't mean the change will happen in the way you think it will. We've seen that in Seattle. They've set a like floor minimum wage. And now it's been about 2-3 months since they've done that. Now we have people who are drivers speaking up about how, yes, they're making more money per active time, right? They're making more money per hour of active time. But the overall money they're making has decreased because of more saturation because of the new law and because less people are ordering food because of the fee increases, right? You increase minimum pay, it has to be paid from somewhere. And, these companies, even if they do shady things that to increase the average cost of meals, it's going to play a role into the supply and demand. So just because we have these laws that get executed doesn't mean it's going to look like the way we thought it would. And I'm not saying that means we shouldn't do anything. I think progress is important, but it does mean we need to put ourselves in a position to when we are trying to progress and that progression doesn't come out the way we thought it would. Right? I think that's pretty reasonable. And that's what I push here. Right? I think the individual's finances is more important than the collective. And I am here to encourage you guys to pay down your debt, pay off your car loans, stop getting car loans, stop rolling over negative equity from your last car to your new car. I want you guys to be in a position to, one, escape, and then two, to use rideshare as a stepping stone into that thing that you always wanted to do. You want to become a pilot? It's expensive. It's like $10,000 to get your private license. You can do it if you pay off your bills, if you're lowering your expenses. That stuff can happen. And I don't think like sacrificing every big day, St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, Super Bowl, to make a point to companies who we shouldn't be working for long term is the best use of your individual time, right? I do think striking has benefits, right? We've seen it. Just those benefits take so long, and those benefits don't always benefit everyone in the way they think it will. So that's important for me to say before we look through the aftermath of the V-Day strike. So this is from Vox. The title of the story is Why Lyft and Uber drivers did their largest strike ever. This came out February 14th, which was Valentine's Day, and it came out at 7:10. So I guess after they thought it was over. I don't know, they're pretty quick getting this out. It says the protest spotlights gig workers' lack of basic labor protections. On Wednesday, Lyft, Uber, and DoorDash drivers mounted one of their largest strikes ever as part of a push for fair pay and better protections. The strikes, which took place in as many as 44 cities across the country, lasted at least 2 hours and featured drivers refusing to give riders while gathering at airports in cities including Chicago, Newark, Philadelphia. Drivers are protesting the wages they're being paid, a lack of transparency around how pay is calculated, and concerns about abrupt account deactivations by the apps. Now, I do have to say, there are kind of like two rideshare entities that kind of spearheaded the strike movement. There was like one that's kind of like trying to be a union type thing. We can't really have unions as independent contractors. And they did their thing at the airport for 2 hours. I don't think that, so that strike is good for generating press. Fine. But airport drivers at the airport doing airport stuff is not going to move the needle in the way that I think the other half did it. So the other half is kind of like spearheaded by like the Rideshare Professor, the Mic Drop podcast, and some of those other YouTubers where it's not a 2 hour strike. It's let's the strike all day. What we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our apps on and we're gonna keep declining rides so that like other drivers aren't benefiting and whatever like that. I think has more of an effect than what this half did. But regardless, press was gained because of it. So it says the protests underscore how few protections gig workers who have been classified as independent contractors under state and federal laws have compared to employees. While companies are required to abide by minimum wage laws and provide healthcare benefits for employees, gig workers lack the same safety net and must rely on corporations voluntarily improving their working conditions. Pay has gotten significantly lower in recent years. An Uber driver who planned a rally at Reagan Airport said outside Washington, D.C. That's why people are super angry right now. The strikes were largely organized by Rideshare Drivers United and Justice for App Workers, two labor organizations that focus on advocacy for app-based independent contractors. The groups choose. So I think this is a little unfair. I think the Rideshare Professor was calling for the strike before them. And I feel like in some of these articles, he's not getting the press he deserves, but it's about half and half. He's in a couple articles, and then we have this. The groups chose Valentine's Day for the protest because the level of business the apps tend to see on the holiday and of the symbolism it has for drivers' inability to spend time with people they care about. Too many Uber and Lyft drivers are unable to spend time with their own children and loved ones as they work extreme hours in mobile sweatshop conditions with virtually zero protections on the job. I don't think it's all that. Mobile sweatshop conditions, that's a little like over the top. I don't like that hyperbole. But I will say this. I will say that while a 1 day strike is great for press, right? I think something that would be cool is like maybe we pick the slowest day of the week, probably Tuesday, and all drivers kind of like agree not to protest. And I think that has like a better long-term impact, right? One, we're not missing out on as much money, but two, people still have to get to school, people still have to get to work. And I think when drivers start impacting that on a regular basis, it will have a more long-term effect. Now, some drivers aren't on the internet, right? Some drivers don't know about the strikes. Like I've heard stories from drivers talking to other drivers who like, wait, the strikes today is happening right now. Like not everyone's aware. We're a very small minority on the internet. So what would be cool is if we had a long-term striking mythology, eventually it would spread. Pretty much be a word of mouth. Wednesday would happen and the passenger would be like, man, it's really hard to get rides on Tuesdays. You know what's up with that? Yeah, we're striking. Like even when I was driving on Valentine's Day, some of the passengers were like talking about it. So if we were to do this over a long period of time, every Tuesday, strike Tuesday, protest Tuesday, whatever it is, I think that I'm not going to say it's better or worse than striking on just the busy days, but it's something that I'd be more willing to commit to. I take every Tuesday off, sure. And then on those Tuesdays, I'm going to be preaching to you guys that, start chasing those dreams, right? If you're trying to become a doctor, go buy a doctor book. And on Tuesdays, that's what you're doing. You're reading about that. For me, Tuesdays would be editing videos. So I think that I might make a video asking the Rideshare Professor how he feels about it and breaking down why I think it would be a great idea. I don't know. We'll see. That's a time commitment, but I think that would be cool in the grand scope of things. Hey, everybody, Tuesdays, we protest. So let's keep going with the story. Story says too many Uber and Lyft drivers are unable to spend time with their own children and loved ones as they work extreme hours in mobile sweatshop conditions with virtually zero protections of the job. In response to the strikes, Lyft and Uber have cited median and average pay figures above minimum wage for drivers, as well as tools they've launched to make it easier for workers to report safety concerns and deactivations. I don't know how I didn't realize this before, but I believe that Lyft put out that 70% split thing to get ahead of the strike. And not necessarily to downplay it. There's some downplaying happen, but to assign blame. Like Lyft is saying that majority of these fees are going towards insurance, and whether you disagree or agree with that, I don't care. If you disagree, show me proof so I can like have a better argument. But I think that Lyft wants drivers to realize that if insurance wasn't as expensive, then they could get more money in hopes that drivers start protesting towards that idea. I think that's what the reason was for it. And let's see. I think this article is probably going to touch on that. So it says, according to Lyft, its median driver made $23.46 per hour after expenses as of the second half of 2023 while on a trip. While Uber said its average driver made $33 per hour as of the fourth quarter of 2023 while on a trip before expenses. This is misleading. They're talking about active time. They're saying whenever a passenger, nope, they're saying whenever a driver is on the way to a passenger and or a passenger is in their car, that they are making $23 an hour with Lyft and $33 per hour with Uber. But that is misleading because we need to measure our time. And from the moment we go online, we start driving, to the moment we stop driving, how much money are we making? And they are trying to shift the goalposts to be about how much money we make online to how much money we make when people are in our car. No, duh, we're gonna make money when people are in our car. I would hope we're making money while people are in our car. But if there's not enough business to make money, like while you're online, then the active time doesn't matter. If you only have 4 hours of active time per week, but you were online for 40 hours, you cannot pay your bills despite even if you made $100 per hour. Like it's not a great time. It's not a great metric for measuring overall profitability. Now, it is a great metric for other things. It's just not a great metric for this talking point that they're trying to do. And someone asked me, why am I so like bothered by it? Because I've already noticed that the way drivers are talking to each other are in active time. And it's active time looks better on paper, but it's not the correct story. So you can see that, I really get wound up about that active time stuff. Lyft also shared that it will soon release earnings summaries for each ride that allow drivers to see where the fare money goes. Both companies said that they had not witnessed major disruptions to their service during the strikes. So there's probably no major disruptions, but they probably had to pay out more in bonuses. And then I will also say that I don't have access to the fare breakdown yet, and I can't wait. I can't wait until I have it because I really want. I'm gonna break it down every week. It's gonna be more content, which is great as a YouTuber. But I used to be a district manager. Numbers are important. Using numbers to correlate what's happening in your business are extremely important. So I'm really excited to have that information so I can have more accurate information to regurgitate to you guys. So, a 2023 report from the UCLA Labor Center, however, found that companies are pocketing a greater share of customers' fare in recent years. In a study that analyzed data from 2019, 2020, and 2022, New York City Uber and Lyft riders New York City Uber and Lyft rides, researchers found passengers' fares for both companies increased at a faster rate than driver pay for those same rides. And that makes sense. So let me finish this paragraph and I'll kind of dive a little more into that. The study also found the amount of companies take from each ride is highly variable and that they're now taking a larger percentage than they once were. Okay, I had a realization. I put out a video yesterday, a boring video about me going through Lyft's methodology for how they decided on the 70% split. Like what math did they use? What studies did they use to come up with it? It's valuable information, boring as shit to read. Just being completely honest with you, but I put it out there because even if it's boring, you guys should have access to that information. So what I will say is that one, insurance across the board is increasing, right? My insurance went from $300 for 2 cars plus rideshare endorsement, right? My wife's car, my car. So on average, her car is $100, my car was $100, the rideshare endorsement was an extra $100. So my car was kind of $200. It went from that $300 to $500, which is like about a 50% increase per month. About $500 per month, and it's not, we got into no accidents, no tickets, no nothing. It's just everyone else. So because everyone else sucks and they're getting into accidents and doing whatever, getting tickets, people who have done nothing have to pay more money. That's kind of the game in how insurance works. Insurance is like betting. These companies are betting that they're able to collect more money than they have to pay out. That's just how it works, and it's okay. And I'm not overall upset at that, but even with Lyft and Uber, this is true. In that white paper that I referenced, Lyft said that 90% of the drivers are driving like 10 hours per week. That's nothing. It was really, I was so shocked by that. I still don't believe it. Even though I just said that to you, I don't believe it. And I think what's happening is, the problem is these full-time drivers, us, we are paying for the insurance of these smaller drivers, right? There's no breakdown of how insurance is broken down, and we need that information, right? I think I've contemplated drumming up a petition that forces or calls out Uber and Lyft for not really breaking down that insurance amount. But I don't see why they don't, because if it is true that insurance is the highest expense, and if we as investors, people who are invested in the stock, Uber and Lyft as the company themselves, and drivers all tackle the insurance costs for these companies, it would benefit everyone I just listed, including the riders. So if what they're saying is true, they need to give us more information to validate that truth. I would rather buy my own commercial insurance, because I have a video, I'll put it out soon, where I looked at how much it costs for commercial insurance. It was like, for me, in my market, which is really high right now, it was like $500 to $600 extra on insurance per month. But if you look at the fees compared to how much I drive, I would make more money paying for my own insurance and not having Uber and Lyft taking a cut for insurance, right? Even if they were to increase their cut after external fees, it would still be more profitable. However, that would only be profitable to full-time drivers, because insurance companies would charge all drivers about $600. It's going to differ depending on your market. But let's just call it $600 at the high end. If you charge someone who is part-time $600 a month for insurance, and they're only driving $200 to $300 a week, that's not worth it for them. But a lot of the part-time drivers might be driving Friday, Saturday, which are the busy nights. So it might not be in Lyft and Uber's full interest to do that, which is why I don't think they're being completely transparent about it. But I think that's a good like thing to target. If I start a petition to see how many people are interested in doing that, and probably try to, how involved do I want to get into this? I don't know how involved I want to get. That's kind of a big part of it for me too. But yeah, we'll keep moving. We'll keep going. We gotta speed through this. In a similar vein, a 2024 Business Insider analyst concluded that Lyft's and Uber's sense of drivers' hourly earnings can differ greatly from that of drivers because of how they make that calculation. I bet you're going to start talking about active time. Both companies typically only factor in active time driving passengers when totaling earnings, not time spent waiting on the app for rides, which many drivers also count as working, which all drivers, this is Tristan talking, not the article, all drivers should count towards working. It's not just pay that's a concern, however. Riders are also striking in the hope of putting pressure on companies and lawmakers to improve safety protections and to provide more stability regarding access to the app. Gig workers are more vulnerable than other workers because they are not legally considered employees, and therefore they do not have all of the rights and protections that regular workers get, including the right to minimum wage and overtime. This means that their employees have no legal obligation to pay them any wage rate, let alone the minimum wage. They are also not protected against workplace discrimination and unsafe working conditions. Generally speaking, if you're making less than minimum wage during normal periods, like not slow periods, this job is probably not for you. But just because we are making more than minimum wage doesn't mean it's the correct amount we should be getting paid, because we do have expenses and things like that. So I don't want you to conflate those two things. Practically, this has meant that there is no pay standard for independent contractors who work for companies like Lyft and Uber beyond those that the app companies voluntarily set. The companies are also under no obligation to help in the case of injury, and there's limited recourse for workers if their accounts are deactivated. They're working on that. Wednesday's strike aren't the first time workers have mobilized in recent years. All right, looks like they're kind of like giving us a history lesson. Sorry, article's over, so you can kind of understand the sentiment, what people are feeling, why they're doing it. Let's check out what it looked like when drivers actually went on strike in front of Uber's main office in California. Let's pull that up. So this is from the Rideshare guy. I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. I kind of just want to scroll through it, so you guys can kind of see the numbers, right?
Yeah. Watch for your video. Yeah, you know Sergio? Sergio's around here. So, yeah. Oh, Chris? I don't know if Chris isn't here, but
with us 75.25 and the original mileage and time with base fare, go back to that. That's what we want.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing your.
This is one way to do it.
So essentially what he's saying is so drivers actually used to be a finite split between Uber and Lyft drivers. I think it was like 80% for drivers, 20% for Uber. That's when they were back starting out trying to get people on the platform. I do think they need to go back to that promised split, and we can see Lyft inching towards it, but it's still not what it needs to be.
What do you think is an ideal solution for drivers? What would be ideal for you as far as pay and
The ideal for me would be for them to go back to the original agreement.
The original rate card,
when
right?
we started.
Yeah.
Go back with us 75.25 and the original mileage and time with base fare. Go back to that.
So I can show you what he's talking about. Charleston rate card. This is an old rate card. The one that's going to show you isn't like accurate. I guess I should put Lyft, huh? He's saying upfront pay came out like what, a year or two ago. I remember I was there for that switch. Our rides used to be like this. This is the base fare. Here's how much we get per mile. This is old. So this is not what I was earning when it switched. I was earning about 70 cents per mile in my town. You see the cost per minute, going back to what I said way earlier, where we make a lot more money per mile than we do per time, which is why if you're sitting in traffic, it's not a great time. Don't sit in traffic. Then you have your maximum fare, your minimum fare, scheduled ride cancellation penalty, scheduled ride minimum fare. That's not a thing here at all. So you got your service fees, and it shows you, right? It shows you the service fee. It's flat. It's a rate card. It's flat. It shows you the South Carolina local assessment fee. All right, now we know this is what government's charging. So we got fares that varies. There's no tolls where I live, so I see why that varies. Airport fees, that's something that's set by the government. So it looks like we had this information and they robbed it from us. And then when they brought it back, they made it variable. So like that's why I think that drivers who are driving more often are paying for the insurance of the drivers who aren't driving often because of that variableness. So let's see what else there is. We'll quickly go through.
So much work to be done.
There's a lot of people here, right? And just remember, potentially everybody in a green shirt is probably a driver, right? And just seeing 10 drivers in one place, to me, that's a lot of people. And this looks like a good chunk of people.
And I said I would talk, but I want to.
Amazing.
Sergio.
And any observations, Sergio, of today?
I think this is all necessary. This is part of the process, right? And it's ironic, by the way, out of all days today, Uber announces a $7 billion with a B share buyback, and their stock goes up by over 15%. Out of all days of the protest and the strikes, right?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Uber traditionally has not been profitable, but don't let that fool you. Companies can choose not to be profitable. Companies can choose to take the money that they've made and invest it into something else, right? What happened was with the softening of the economy, a lot of investors started pulling back their money. And so Uber didn't have free money to play with anymore. They actually had to show that they're profitable in order to keep their stock from increasing. That's why we saw all those layoffs. That's why we're seeing all these changes that are affecting driver pay. So for the last 2 quarters, they've been profitable. So their stock is skyrocketing. And now that they are profitable, they're doing some buybacks. So what does that mean for drivers? Not much, right? It kind of showcases where Uber's headspace is, where they're focused more on their stock than they are on the drivers, because some of the changes they are making are impacting pay but we're seeing on paper what their income for their company is increasing. So like it doesn't mean too much for us like directly, but you're seeing where the siphoning is happening.
Yeah.
So where did that 7 billion come from? Where did it come from? It came from all these people's pockets. And to me,
Tesla's out
look,
there.
fairness is fair. We got to play fair, and obviously they don't have a history of playing fair, but I
So if you're not following this channel, go ahead and follow it. We don't always stand on the same principles, but it's very important that people have different perspectives. So make sure you're following a bunch of different rideshare. You know, how I think, I like to think how I think is the best way to think, but it's not always the best way to think. And you should be cross-referencing with other channels as well. So let's keep moving forward. So this is, I actually don't have time for this. I'll show you in case you're interested, but this is what we call Reddit, right? This is a place where normal people come to say things. And then this is the subreddit for Uber drivers. So this is where Uber drivers come to say things, right? And it's kind of ranked based off of like comments and how many people upvote it, like how interesting it is. You can see here, strike going strong in New Jersey, and they show their screenshot. You know, there's a couple others. There's a couple here for Lyft as well. So I think every now and then, maybe once a week, drivers really should check in on Uber Reddit and Lyft Reddit to kind of get their heart on the pulse of what's happening, if you care, right? If you care. So this is LA on a Wednesday, and you know, people are saying usually at this time on a Wednesday, it's not bonusing this way. So they're kind of using that as a metric, and I think it's fair to say that the strike is effective, in especially with press at minimum. Even if they failed to stop drivers from driving, the amount of press that we've got as a result for it is pretty darn cool. So I will give them props for that. I was gonna go through a couple of them, but it's 5:46. I'm running out of time, and I am going to buy a Tesla. Like not for real, because I don't think it's a great idea. I just want to prove to you with math, logic, and reasoning why rideshare drivers should stop buying brand new Teslas. And I'm going to walk you through it right now. Let me get my resources up. I've been wanting to do this for so long, but I had to make sure that I had my information correct, you know? So we're on a website. This is tesla.com. The first thing we see is that I can get a Model Y starting at $31,000, $890. I want to have a notepad out because I want to take some notes while we're doing this so that we're not forgetting some of these numbers that they're trying to throw at us. It's gonna appear behind me. All right, here we go. Okay, so saying Model Y for 31 grand, $890. And then immediately, you know what we see? We see an asterisk. And the asterisk is after federal tax credits and after estimated gas savings. So that's important to see. So let's shop, right? Let's go shop for a Tesla. All right, so it says 77,500 for federal tax credit. Eligible buyers receive 7,500 off the purchase price of all new 2024 Model Ys. It's applied to the purchase price at the time of delivery. There's leases. Don't lease. Lease are the most expensive ways to own a car. And there's often mileage restrictions on leases. You don't want to be leasing as a rideshare driver. You don't even want to be using debt as a rideshare driver. But let's pretend that's what we're going to do. Pricing update, new Model Y rear-wheel drive and long-range all-wheel drive prices reduced for deliveries now through February 29th. Prices increased by 1,000 or more on March 1st. So they're trying to like pressure you into doing it. So here's the Model Y. All right. $40,930. Model Y rear-wheel drive. This is 526 on odometers. This isn't even brand new, is it? This is a demo vehicle. You can buy the demo vehicle if you wanted to. Look at that car payment. The car payment, $637 per month. And that's if you put $4,500 down, 72 month, 6.49 APR. You know what? Let's go back. This is about buying a new Tesla. So that's what I'm not quite sure what's happening there. So, here's what we'll do. What is the cheapest Tesla? So the Model 3 is the cheapest Tesla. All right, so we're gonna go back to here. We're gonna go to vehicles. This is the Model 3 right here. The Model 3 did just get updated. It looks very nice. The Tesla is a car that I want someday, but this is about rideshare. This isn't about personal use. So we're gonna go custom order. So here it is, Model 3. We're gonna go look at so this is based off of probable savings. We're gonna look at purchase price. So right now it says $38,990. We're gonna go for the rear wheel drive. The dual motors have longer range. They're better overall, but we're gonna keep it the cheapest, right? This is the cheapest Tesla that we can get. It says all prices are shown without incentives or a 3-year estimated gas savings of $3,000. I think it's weird that they include. So if I go to probable savings, the price changes from $38,990 to $35,990 because it no longer includes the $3,000 of gas savings. I think that's so weird and manipulative to include in your price. But whatever, right? We're gonna pick the base paint because it's free, it's included, right? We're gonna try to spend the least amount of money to make the most amount of profit. We can go with the Nova wheels, which they are nicer, but the cheaper wheels are actually better for electricity consumption. So we're gonna go with the regular wheels, the stock wheels. Interior, I would love to go white, but it's an extra $1,000. We're not gonna do that. Maybe when I get it for personal reasons, but for rideshare reasons, we're gonna keep it black. So now this is enhanced autopilot. $6,000 will get you. You can navigate on autopilot. You can auto lane change, auto park, summon, smart summon. This will be great as a rideshare driver, but I can't afford it. So we're gonna skip past it. Now this is full self-driving capability for $12,000. It says your car will be able to drive itself almost anywhere with minimal driver intervention and will continuously improve. All functionality of basic autopilot and enhanced autopilot. It has auto steer on city streets, traffic light and stop sign control. This would be great for like longer drives. It would be amazing. There's some longer drives where I wish I had something like this, but for $12,000, I can't afford it. That's like 3 months of the average, 3 to 4 months of the average driver's income. We can't afford that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to add it. So charging, to charge at home makes it cheaper, right? So we are going to need the wall charger, and I'm not 100% sure what the mobile connector is for. I think it allows you to charge at other like charging stations. And as a rideshare driver, we should have. I think I'd want the ability to do that. I don't want to get caught with my pants down with no electricity. So we're going to keep those options on the car. So let's continue, right? It says order your Model 3. Estimated delivery date is between February and March 2024, which is not bad. I don't think that's a bad delivery date. All right, so it gives us the lease option, but we already said we're not going to lease. Now, if you wanted to buy cash, which most people don't, it would be $40,630, right? But let's assume you're going to finance this. So the purpose of this video is for me to convince you not to do this. And if you want to do this, you should pay cash. And if you can't pay cash, which most people don't, the financing is the option. So let's they want to pre-qualify me, little old Tristan, to see if I qualify. And the pre-qualifying works without affecting my credit score. I personally don't care about my credit score anymore because I don't use debt anymore. I'm a cash person. The only debt I have left is student loans. When I buy my next car, it's going to be in cash. I'm going to save up for it. But I don't use debt anymore. So I don't even care about my loan score anymore. But I want to make sure I don't give you guys my address. So I'm going to go full cam for a second while I fill this form out. It's asking for my name, my date of birth. Give me a second. $1992. All right. I'm 32 years old. I was born in 92. I'm a 92 baby. All right. So that's my email address, my phone number, my address, my annual income. For annual income, I'm going to put $80,000. I'm going to say I'm hustling. I'm a great rideshare driver, but this is household. So we're including my wife's income. I want to say $80,000 is what I'm going to put for my annual income. I'm going to hit submit. Okay. So now I can show you guys what the result was. Pretty fast. I'm pretty impressed. It doesn't have an effect on your credit score. Not that I would care. and it shows you how much I pre-qualified for. Of course, they're going to go through your documents, your statements to make sure you actually qualify for this. So don't lie. You want to be honest. And what I put was kind of on the lower end, and it was expectation based, but whatever. That's not the point here. So it says pre-qualified to finance your purchase. You have pre-qualified for financing up to $44,124. This pre-qualification is not an approval or offer of credit, nor a guarantee of financing, which is available in select states. If you would like to proceed with the financing of your vehicle purchase, you will need to place your order and submit a credit application. So just for some clarity there. Tesla will then pull your credit report, otherwise known as a hard inquiry, which may affect your credit file. Once completed, Tesla will provide you with your final financing. I'm going to hit continue, but I'm also going to hide it because I don't know what's going to happen on the next screen. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me quickly scroll just to make sure my address isn't here. Okay. So it says I replied now. Hold on. Something's up. Give me a second. Let me make sure I'm on the correct thing. Apply now. Continue. There's another page. There's like another page over here. Okay. Yeah, I found it. So after you apply and it shows you that number I just showed you on the previous screen, it shows you your estimated gas savings over 6 years. It says $6,000, right? For the Model 3 gasoline car. But down here, you can kind of like change the data that it's using to calculate it. So I think that for me, I see every business year as a business year. If I make a purchase, I need to be able to justify it in 1 year. If you're taking multiple years to justify a business purchase for rideshare, you probably don't need that purchase. So we're gonna do 1 year. Annual miles, we're gonna say about $80,000. $80,000. We're gonna say about 80,000 miles. I think that's for what I'm trying to accomplish this year. 80,000 miles isn't unreasonable. So gasoline costs. Let's look at what the gasoline costs. Average gas costs. All right, let's look what the average gas cost is in America. AAA has a great website that kind of breaks it down like this. Of course, gas is expensive over there in California. Over here in South Carolina, we're typically on the cheaper end. It's about $3. Not bad. But because I'm trying to appeal to the masses, we're going to do the average. So today's AAA national average, the average price is $3.27, right? And this can fluctuate, but this is what we're going to use for now. So $3, what was it? I forgot. 327. So 328. We're going to round up. $3.28 per gallon. And this says gasoline car efficiency. Now, if you know me, I think the best car to use is a Prius. So that's what we're going to do. Prius MPG. Let's see what it says. What is the average Prius MPG? The average Prius is 57 miles per gallon for city and 56 miles per gallon for highway. And that's not the electric versions. The electric versions have like 100 something, like it's like hybrid electric mix, but let's just use the lower amount here. Let's say 56 miles per gallon for highway. Right? That's the one that we're going to use. So 56 mpg per gallon. Now, there is electricity costs, and this cost is the assumption that you never use superchargers. So we're going to pause for a second and we're going to walk through this. We need to determine, will rideshare drivers use superchargers? Because that can have a big difference on the price, and I want to prove it. So I'm going to go full screen here to make sure I am navigating correctly. All right, so here's a Reddit post from two people who use Teslas for rideshare. I'm going to walk through it. So this guy, it's entitled, this is from r/Uber drivers on Reddit, and it's titled Tesla Life with Uber. We're going to walk through what he says, and we're going to walk through one of the comments responding to this. Okay. Wake up ready to earn Darryl some money. Head to the closest supercharging station because I can't charge at home due to living in an apartment. So that's already off the bat. That's something you have to think about. Do you live somewhere where you will be able to charge? If not, your only option left is a supercharger, which we just have to see how much that costs. So 26-minute drive with minimum traffic. I arrive, car is at 18%. He plugs it in, he waits 50 minutes for it to reach 88%, and he pays $20.16. He drives for almost so the reason why he's charging to 88%, I have to explain how batteries work for a second. And with the exception of the newest one, because I guess the battery tech has changed and I expect it to change over time, it is recommended that you don't charge Teslas to over 85%. It helps with the length of the battery, and it takes a long time to charge it from 85 to 100. It might take you 20 minutes to go from like 60 to 80, and it might take you like 40 minutes to go from 80 to 100. The reason is that the I might get the terminology here, but the electricity that's charging the batteries is bouncing around in the batteries until it finds where it belongs. And the more electricity is in the battery, the more the new electricity has to bounce around to figure out where can it go. So that's like the I don't really know about engineering explanation for how it works. So that's why this person, as a rideshare driver, will probably charge it to 80. One, because we don't want to destroy the battery in the long term. And then two, because if to go from 80 to 100 will take too long and it would eat into our pay. So that's something that has to be considered. Like, I'm not just making this stuff up. This is how this stuff actually works. So he says he drives for almost 6 hours, makes $110, which is on the low end. But, depending on what time of day he's driving, that's he's probably driving through traffic. What time he said he wakes up? Ready to earn. He never said what time, but that would have been a good minimum traffic. So he's driving during traffic periods, which we discussed why you shouldn't do that. So he says he drives for almost 6 hours, makes $110. I'm at 40% charge. After 6 hours, he loses more than half of his charge. 10.4% was lost just because it's below 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. Something you also have to think about. If you drive somewhere where it's cold, battery health doesn't go as far as when the battery is warm. So you're going to have to think about that when you're making your purchase. So he has 20% left before he runs back to the charging station and pay another $20 and wait another 50 minutes. Boy, I love having 2 hours of my day lost waiting for a car to charge. I mean, who doesn't? But it's cheaper. Yeah, the cheaper charging stations are great if you want to hibernate in your car for 7+ hours. So what he's referring to here is Tesla has superchargers that charges their cars fast, but there are other chargers, typically made by the government, where they're not as fast and they take longer to charge, and that's the trade-offs. That's something you have to think about as well. He says Hertz has nothing but Teslas available, so I'm stuck in it. So he didn't really mention this earlier, but apparently he's renting. Moral of the story, if you can't charge your Tesla at home for any reason, never, ever, ever get one. The superchargers will rake you over the coals with Elon's smug face laughing all the way to the bank. So that's one perspective. But I love reading the comments here on Reddit because we get to see how other people respond. And there was one really good response here. This is from Expensive Mud. He says, yeah, not charging at home, no bueno, which means no good if you're not fluent in Spanish like I am. My Uber life in my Tesla, he wakes up with a full charge because he charges at home. He drives for about 4 hours, park at a Tesla supercharger, and charge for free while he grabs some breakfast and a coffee. He drives for 4 more hours, do lunch, and recharge for free, drives just a bit more and head home and plug it in for the night. Some of the early Tesla adopters were able to get unlimited charging forever just because they were an early adopter. That's obviously not going to be true for the rest of us who get a Tesla in the future. But here's what I like about his comment. He confirms that about 4 to 6 hours of driving, he has to go back and charge. If I'm driving 18 hours a day, not a day. A couple of days a year I drive 18 hours, but typically I'm driving 12 to 16 hours. I have to charge 3 times at a supercharger. I'm charging once at home. So I'm spending 25% of my income at home charging and the other 75% charging at superchargers. Now, we do know that the number Tesla is using right here, this is the average amount a kilowatt per hour costs when you charge at home. But that is not the average amount a kilowatt costs at a supercharger. So this is Google Gemini. This is AI. It helps me do calculations, math, and make points without like searching all over the web. I'll read the disclaimer at the bottom. It says Gemini may display inaccurate information, including about people. So double check its response. I've double checked these responses. I've ran them already. So my prompt, which is like my query, what did I ask Gemini? I asked Gemini, how much does it cost to drive a Tesla 1,000 miles using average supercharger prices versus a Prius with the average gas prices? So here's what it had to say. Here's a breakdown of the estimated cost to drive a Tesla 1,000 miles using superchargers versus a Prius using gasoline. Let's assume you're driving a Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. One of the most common models, efficiency. Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus gets approximately 250 watt hours per mile. Average Tesla supercharger costs vary by location, but let's use 30 cents per kilowatt hour as a reasonable estimate. Here's the calculation. So it multiplies 1,000 miles by the 250 kilowatts per mile, which gives us 250,000 watt hours. And then it divides those watt hours by 1,000, which gives us 250. And then it multiplies that by the 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which gives us a total of $75, right? So for every hour. So for every 1,000 miles you drive a Tesla, you're going to spend $75 at a supercharger, right? So now we need to see what does it cost for every 1,000 miles on a Prius. The Toyota Prius averages roughly 52 miles per gallon, which is actually lower than the estimate that I gave you guys earlier. We'll still run with it. The current US national average prices is around $3.50 per gallon, which is higher than what I just showed you guys. So the calculation here is 1,000 miles divided by 52 miles per gallon equals 19.23 gallons. 19.23 gallons multiplied by the average gas price of $3.50 per gallon gives us $67.31. A lot of people are saying that the cost of how much money they are saving on gas makes up for the difference between the price of a used Prius and a Tesla. Let's explore that. Let's see how that could be true. So before we do, here's the summary. Tesla Model 3 supercharging, about $75. Toyota Prius, about $67.31, which is cheaper. It does give us some important things to consider, and I'd feel fake if I didn't read this to you. Prices can vary significantly depending on location, time of day, and local electricity rates. Some places can be more expensive, pushing the cost higher than a comparable gas car. California. Well, that's also true for the electricity and for gas. So that needs to be said. Tesla owners who primarily charge at home can drastically reduce their costs. Consider this if you're calculating for personal use, and that's a fair point. But don't be concerned, I'm not biased. We declared that if I were to have a Tesla, I'd probably only be able to charge it overnight. I'd have to supercharge it 3 out of 4 times a day. So that means 75% would be supercharged and 25% would be at home. I did those calculations too, and we'll check them out. We'll check it out. It says gasoline prices fluctuate continuously. A significant increase in gas price can make the Prius less cost effective. This is true. This is a good point, something that has to be considered. Driving style and conditions can impact both Tesla and a Prius efficiency, changing the costs. That's fine. Whatever. Here's the conclusion for this specific set of information. For this specific scenario, driving a Toyota Prius for 1,000 miles is slightly cheaper than using Tesla superchargers. However, factors like home charging for Tesla and fluctuating gas prices could easily change this in the future. Very fair point, right? So here's my next prompt. My next prompt is, what would the comparison look like if the Tesla driver charges 2/3 of the time at a supercharger and 1/3 at home using average electricity prices? Here's the comparison. So Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, same as before. Supercharger costs 30 cents kWh, same as before. The home electricity costs 16 cents kWh, which is exactly what Tesla has here. So we know that this comparison that they're using is based off of charging it at home, because the average Tesla buyer probably should be charging it at home. But as rideshare drivers, the batteries just don't last long enough for us to be able to do that. So let's keep moving forward with the calculation. So to calculate supercharger miles, it says 666 miles. To calculate the at home miles, it's 333 miles, like how much charge per mile they're getting. And then it says the total Tesla cost, it would be $50 for just the supercharging, and then $13.33 for the home charging, right? So now when we do the comparison, we see that the Tesla Model 3 with mixed charging is approximately $63.33, but the Toyota Prius is now approximately $67.31. Man, the Tesla beat the Prius. But what happens when we compare the cost of a Prius, a used Prius, because that's what I'm going to tell you guys to get a used Prius, to the cost of a new Tesla? And I know there are used Teslas out there. I'll have to make a different video where I compare those as well. But this video, the main focus here is to convince you not to buy a brand new car, especially not to buy a brand new Tesla, and instead get a used Prius. So a lot of people might be thinking this isn't apples to apples, but it is. This is your purchasing dollars versus your purchasing dollars. So I would never tell you to get a new car. Maybe a used Tesla. I'll have to do a different video for that. But for right now, we're comparing why you should avoid getting a brand new Tesla and instead get a much cheaper Prius. So let's look at what the price difference is. Let's see how many miles would we have to drive to justify the cost saving between electricity and gasoline. So the conclusion says, by mixing in home charging, the Tesla becomes slightly more cost effective over 1,000 miles compared to the Toyota Prius. Let's just scroll down to the new prompt. The new prompt says, considering the price of a Tesla after interest is $47,500 and a used Prius for $15,000. So I got that $47,500 by, I went on the Tesla website, like you saw, I tried buying the car, and it was a 72 month loan at about 9% interest rate, which is really high, guys. So even though you're purchasing the car for $30,000, 30-ish, $33,000, whatever that number was, at the end of the loan, if you don't pay for it in cash, you're going to be spending $47,500 on that car. Keep in mind, Teslas have one of the worst depreciations. Like, let's look at it. Tesla depreciation versus Prius. I know it is because I've looked at this already. I looked at it, I think, last week. Look at, there's one with a graph that's like not that, but a lot easier. Let me see, table. It's Car Edge. Let's see. These are brand new to brand new. One, you don't buy new cars because of the depreciation. You want someone else to eat that depreciation. Even if you buy a used car from 2-3 years ago, they're still fine. I bought a 2017 and 2019, and I bought it for 13 grand, and it's worth 8 now. Like, let someone else eat that depreciation. We're not rich enough to have that happen. So I said the depreciation is pretty similar. This is about 40, this is about 48%. But even, I think it would be better to compare a used depreciation for this video. I don't want to get too deep into it. I'm running out of time, so I don't want to get too deep into it. So let's go back to Gemini. Considering the price of a Tesla after interest, $47,500, and a used Prius for 15 grand, I would probably buy one for 10 grand, but I want to have that flexibility. So I overestimated 15,000. And you're probably saying, where did I get that number from? I look on Facebook Marketplace, and that's where it comes from. I'd show you, but I'm kind of speed running through it right now. So it says, how many miles would the Tesla have to drive to make up for the gas savings that we found in the previous prompt? So it says, here's a breakdown of how to calculate the mileage needed for the Tesla to break even on cost due to fuel savings, considering the initial price difference, right? So the calculation, the price difference, Tesla's 47,500 minus the cost of the Prius, which is 15 grand, which is the difference between those two is $32,500. So the calculation to figure out the miles to break even would be 32,500 divided by $3.98, the savings per 1,000 miles. And then the total miles that we get from that is 81,658 miles. This doesn't include things like maintenance. Toyota Prius is one of the lowest maintenance related car. Eventually, you do have to replace the battery. The same is true for the Tesla, but a battery replacement on the Prius is about 3 to 5 grand versus on the Tesla is about 10 grand. Tesla doesn't have oil changes, but 81,000 miles, guys. 81,000 miles. That's how many miles you'd have to drive in your brand new Tesla to break even on the consideration of not getting a used Prius. That is a lot. Most drivers aren't driving 81,000. Like a full-time driver, 50, 60 hours a week, probably doing that. Me. Most people aren't doing that. And these people are buying Teslas. The monthly payment for a Tesla, for let's look at it. I think I can, hold on, let me make sure, because I think I have the quote in front. So for me, it says the estimated monthly payment would be $605 per month for a car payment. My Jetta, I was paying $230 for that per month. Now I don't have a car payment because it's paid off. $605. And guess what? We didn't even talk about insurance. This is an actual quote from Progressive. Actual quote. I didn't make this up. This is an actual quote. I pay about $300 for my wife's car, my car, and the rideshare endorsement on top of it. This has the rideshare endorsement on top of it as well. That's for 2 cars. I'm paying $300 for 2 cars. For this one car, it's $376 per month. $376 on top of my $600 car payment. That's $976. $976. Guys, that is $1,000 just for the Tesla. We're not even talking about the price for electricity yet. This is $1,000 a month just for the Tesla. If you're averaging $4,000 a month before taxes and expenses, 25% of your gross income gone. Gone. Your house payment is supposed to be 25% or less than your income. If you have a car payment that is that high, it is going to set you back so much. So much. A lot of drivers try to justify it to me, and I just don't see the justification here. It's just not worth it. Like, it's just not worth it. I don't know how to make that any more clear. If this video hasn't made it any more clear that buying a Tesla is not a good car for rideshare, especially a new one, right? The used one, who knows? But buying a brand new Tesla is not great for rideshare. And I'm going to have to leave it there. I hope you guys challenge yourselves not to use loans to buy your next car. I hope you start saving up. I hope you become more diligent about the money you're making, about where it's going. Try to lower your expenses. Try to plan better, build up an emergency fund. But if the car you buy causes you to have to work more hours than you had to work before, you are falling deeper into the rideshare trap. And I do not want that for you. We are trying to solve for freedom here on this channel. And debt, it takes away your freedom, right? It seems like it's a thing that gets us out of it, but it forced, like, the decisions that you would make if you had to buy a car in cash versus using debt would be different. Even if you had $40,000 sitting in your bank account right now, you having to take that $40,000 out to buy something, you will make a different decision versus you relying on a loan for $40,000. You're going to say, nah, man, you know what? I don't want to use that entire $40,000 for this Tesla. Let me go and get something else. Let me go and get something cheaper. Maybe I go to Hertz, get a used Tesla. Maybe I take Tristan's advice, go on Facebook Marketplace, buy a $10,000 Prius and put $5,000 to the side just in case something's wrong with that Prius. But the decisions that you make will change. And I'm talking from a place of, I took debt off the table, and the decision making that is now available to me is different from when I was okay with using debt. Now that I don't use debt, I'm not waiting to the last minute to start thinking about saving for my new car. I'm putting $200 a month aside, for when something might happen to my car and it's time to get something new. So it changes how you perceive things. It changes your risk tolerance. And I want you guys to realize that one, stop buying a new car. It's the biggest financial killer for Americans, not just in rideshare. Stop buying a new car. If you don't have $1 million net worth and if you're not paying in cash, stop buying a new car. We need to be buying the cheapest thing possible to make the most money. I'm gonna talk more about this. We're gonna talk more about buying cars, the different types of cars. We're gonna talk about 7-seaters. We're gonna talk about how SUVs aren't great for rideshare, right? You're better off taking that money. It's just a 5-seater and buying a Prius. If you want to do XL, okay, it's gonna be more expensive, but you need to also be smart about what kind of XL car you're buying. We're gonna start doing much deeper dives into these things. And if you don't want to miss that, make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard.